is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Hour 2 OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel. Bryan Hayes, Dave Poulin, TSN 1050 up on TSN 2 all afternoon. Steve Phillips coming up in a moment. Jays Nationals tonight. Jays coming off a win last night. Barrios on a mound tonight. But some news with the Jays today is that Bo Bichette has been placed on the IL with a quad strain. Doesn't sound like it's anything major, but if it's major enough that you're going on the IL and it's almost September and it's your best player, that's major.
It is major.
It's major. I don't care how much you try to downplay it.
The position you're in, you're trying to say, we're okay, it's short term here. Mm-hmm. But it's the problem with those leg injuries is you're compensating and hurting something else.
Yeah.
That's the issue, right?
Quad, knee.
The knee, it's a quad, it's a hip. Mm-hmm. And that's the danger here. And for a guy that's as mobile as he is, the position he plays. And he was just hitting.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. If he comes back and he doesn't play short, then all of a sudden he's going to DH for you. Does that take Brandon Belt out of your lineup? Mm-hmm. Probably would. And you want Bichette batting regardless if it's a lefty or righty on the mound.
Absolutely. You've got both catchers, which you use in some
Well, that's another thing, right? Like if Jansen, he had another big one last night.
Like huge one.
If Danny's playing, you want his bat in the lineup. Mm-hmm. And, Alejandro Kirk, though, at no point this year has been a guy that replicated what he did a year ago.
No, but from a catching standpoint, to take the load off of Jansen from time to time.
Absolutely. He's still going to get his starts behind the plate.
Right.
But that is a legitimate concern right now. Like if Bichette is in a situation where he doesn't think he can play the field, you're going to definitely DH him. But if he's not at 100%, what are you going to get at the plate? And it has such a ripple effect on what you're going to do with the rest of your roster.
Well, the left side of the infield.
Well, Bo's had a good season defensively. He has had a really well improved season. He deserves a lot of credit for that.
You're not sure if you want him to play shortstop but he wanted to play shortstop right from day one.
Committed to it.
He was not going to not play shortstop.
He's always identified as a shortstop. He never came off that either. Like he was always adamant. I remember
they wanted him to come off it, didn't they?
I think they want him to play short. In a perfect world, he's your shortstop.
Is he good enough?
But that was always the question. Like you look at his metrics defensively the last couple of years, they were terrible. Like at times, really, really terrible. And a lot of it was mechanics more than anything else. And yet this year, he's really turned things around. Like his numbers are good.
Did Chapman not make him better defensively?
Possibly a part of it.
Biting off just a little piece of that area?
Yep, it can definitely play a factor in that. And that's another thing. Chapman, his bat, you're not going to miss as much because he hasn't been batting that well. Yet it's in there. Like you keep bringing this up the last couple of days, Poulin. You're waiting for this explosion. Well, Chapman represents that as well.
He's part of it.
He can absolutely be a part of it. He replicates what he did in April. You're talking an all-star third baseman and a guy that defensively is a plus player.
Yeah, he's on the high end defensively. Now, what is his injury?
He is dealing with a finger issue. So, again, 10-day IL, affecting his bat, affecting his grip. That like you get anything going on with the hands, the fingers, the wrists.
It's
like
funny, though, if they can
baseball, that's tough, man.
They can get through this, Bryan. You feared guys. Like I feared teams who had guys popping back into the lineup late in the season who had a little rest. If you can get these guys back healthy.
How much time do you have?
Add a little rest. You don't have time.
That's the problem. Like how much time do you have? You got 30 games left. 30 more. Like that's gonna fly by, man. We're gonna be into late September real quick. So Bichette on the IL, Chapman on the IL. Jays back in action tonight. Josh Donaldson was released by the Yankees earlier today. He was still making like over $21 million. And he's got a club option, I guess, for next year that has an $8 million buyout clause. So Donaldson, he posted something, I think, on Instagram or on Twitter. And he was a good sport about it, thanking everyone at the Yankees. As he should, considering he's still going to get every penny of that 21 plus this year. And they're going to have to, if they buy him out here, basically give him another $8 million on top.
Yeah, we have to ask Steve about this because the complexity.
He's still on the IL.
The complexity of, do they have to buy him out before you can sign him, or you don't want to absorb that?
It's a good question in terms of like what And what kind of market is out there for Donaldson? He's had such a horrible year, and now an injury-riddled year. He hasn't played in months.
But right now, if you can get 2 weeks out of him.
I don't know. Is there anything left in Donaldson?
I don't know.
There's
2 weeks.
I
need him for 2 weeks,
you
Brian.
need him for 2 weeks? Well, you may not be able to get him for another 2 weeks. I don't think he's scheduled to come off the 60-day IL until mid-September.
No,
Here's
I need him right now.
our TSN MLB analyst joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, Steve Phillips. Is there anything left in Josh Donaldson, in your opinion, Steve?
Boy, I tell you what, I don't think so. I mean, you get expanded rosters in September by a couple spots that, maybe you can run them. Chapman will be back by then, I would assume. And so you're not going to play him at third. The question is, he's got so many moving parts in that swing that being a bench player is really hard because it's hard to keep that all in sync when you're not playing every day. And so, the calf injury is such that, that ongoing calf injury that he always seemed to have, even when he was back with the Jays, I really don't think so. And, he hasn't played. He didn't play much this year, and he didn't play well when he did play. And so it just doesn't feel like there's much left in the tank.
Yeah, we were wondering how this works with the Yankees because he's still technically on the IL, I believe. And so take us through the reasoning behind it. I know their season's done. It's a mess. But why all of a sudden are they like, Donaldson's the guy that can't be around anymore?
And how do you release an injured guy?
Well, you can release injured players. You just have to keep paying them. And so that's not a problem. Now you can't send them to the minor leagues when they're injured. They have to go on your major league injured list. Sometimes, if a guy's injured at the big league level, you think, well, let me get him off the roster so I don't have to pay him his major league salary. Now, he's got a guaranteed salary. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, you can release an injured player as long as you keep paying him. And so he was actually down. He was heading down to Tampa to work out, or he was down in Tampa working out. And so maybe they got to the point that they realized that they're not going to bring him back even if he is healthy. They're going to give it bats to some of the kids and let them play out the string that way. At this stage of the game, every at-bat has dollar value. And, taking one of those at-bats away from a kid in his development is really not in the best interest of the organization. So, unless something happened, where he showed up late, and it's none of that. There's no indication of any of that. Then this is really just we're not going to bring him back anyway with where we are. He's not going to help us when he is healthy. And so I think they looked at it and said, it's just time to cut your losses and move on.
So if this is the end of the road for Donaldson, and it very well could be, it felt like it might have been 2 or 3 years ago where it could have been the end of the story for Donaldson. He actually had a resurgence at times with the Yankees. But you look back on his career, he won the MVP in 15. He finished fourth in MVP voting in 13 and in 16. He was top 10 also in 14. Those are not Hall of Fame numbers. He's not. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but is he a step below that, Steve? How will you look back and define the career of Josh Donaldson?
Yeah, so he'll likely be on the ballot. He's got 10 years of Major League service time, and so I think he'll likely be on the ballot when his time is up. If he doesn't play next year, 5 years from now, but he's not a Hall of Famer. I think that part's pretty clear. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a really good career. I mean, you think about his OPS plus in his career is a 130. Now, Harold Baines, got in at 121 or 122, but he had 20 some years worth of playing time and, all of the RBIs. And, Donaldson RBI total it's just 805. It's not over 1,000. And so, I don't see him as a Hall of Fame player. And I don't think he'll extend, and get 5% of the vote. But I think he's, a worthy guy. I mean, you're looking at a guy that was an MVP and had got votes in multiple other years, had some great seasons, and was a solid defender in those seasons as well. So, I think that he'll be remembered as a very good player during probably the window that he was at his best was probably a good 7 or 8 years. And he had the resurgence in Atlanta that got him the 4-year contract with Minnesota. And then obviously he just, he had some injuries there. He had a pretty good year, the second year in Minnesota with 25 home runs, but again, suffered injuries, only played 135 games that season.
With Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst. So the Jays supplied the news that I think most people are bracing for today, that Bo Bichette is going on the IL, retroactive to Monday, but it's a thigh issue now. He's had the knee issue about a month and a half ago. You got Chapman on the IL. They got a weak schedule. They got Washington again tonight. They got Colorado, KC, Oakland coming up. I think those are all games where they'll be favored even without them in the lineup. But you got 30 games left, Steve. We're into September on Friday. Like, how big of a hit could this possibly be? Bichette going to the IL.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I mean, he's their best hitter for sure, and they're going to miss him. And I don't know, I mean, here's the thing. The knee injury clearly led to the quad injury, right? Yeah. It's a compensation injury, and typical. It's not atypical of something that can happen for a player. And I remember I was watching him in the dugout. He ran into an out. He was on second base, ground ball to short. He ran to third, and he sort of stopped, and it was a horrible base running play, and he got tagged out. And then I saw him in the dugout, and the camera shot him in the dugout, and he was taking his fist and grinding it into his quad. And I thought, oh, boy, something's going on there. And then, obviously it came up that he had something happening. And so, I think the hope is that he can come back in 10 days. The reality is he's going to be diminished no matter what. I mean, just between the knee and the quad, it's going to take real time for that all to heal. And, they don't have that real time. So, the issue is how much do you push them? And, the turf at the Rogers Center isn't the most ideal thing to play on when you've got knee and quad issues going on. So, so it's one that he's going to be less than the rest of the year, which means that they're going to need other guys to step up. And obviously with Chapman out too, the whole left side of the infield's a bit of a mess. They need David Schneider to just sort of get hot and play out of his mind. They need Espinal or Clement to step up as shortstop and play out of their mind. And they need everybody else. Vladdy's going to have to put the team on his shoulders. Springer's going to have to get things going. Now, Springer's stealing bases. He's putting the effort in out there to do things. They need the production out of the catchers. Jansen's big home run, a key thing there. They need Varsho to really get going right now. Merrifield's got to keep doing what he's doing. But, the lineup tonight does not have a lot of power in it. And so they're going to have to find ways to score differently, because they don't have that ability necessarily to hit a lot of balls out of the ballpark or even doubles in the gap. And so they're going to have to connect at bats. They're going to have to start runners, go first to third, and do some of those little things. And they're going to have to pitch the heck out of it right now to keep the games close.
Steve, you opened up that with Davis Schneider. And when a guy like that comes up who doesn't have a big pedigree, wasn't a big draft pick, never really tore it up in the minor leagues, and he comes up and does what he's doing, is the excitement tempered on management's side with someone like that, and almost like, let's wait and see if this is real, instead of, like, I think he brings an energy and an excitement just by his his zest for the game, if you will.
Yeah, and his mustache. I mean, look, young
his
guys,
look is great.
Yeah,
it's a great look.
It is a good look. I mean, it's so different that it makes you want to do a double take on it. And he's been a good minor league hitter. He's always been a really good on base percentage guy. And that's been his game, where he'll take his walks, he'll get on base. He, doesn't strike out a ton. You're looking at this year, a .416 on base percentage in the minor leagues. It's pretty impressive. In 2022, a .366. And so, he's got a real good command of the strike zone. And when you do that, you put yourself in a position to be able to get some good counts in which you can drive the baseball. And so, he's played, really beyond, I think, any expectation and what was fair. But ride the hot hand right now. But looking forward, I think, you can have some thought that he could be part of the solution, but I don't know that you can say he's going to bat fourth in your lineup like he did yesterday, and likely is going to be in there today doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. But he's got a chance to be a solid player for you moving forward if the defense allows him to be that guy.
Yeah, he's hitting second tonight. So they got Springer back leading off, which is where he's comfortable. He looked good last night doing it. You got Springer leading off into Schneider, into Vladdy, Jansen hitting cleanup. Then Merrifield, Kirk, Clement, Espinal, Kiermaier.
Yeesh.
Woo.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's not striking fear.
No.
In Mackenzie Gore. Now listen, Mackenzie Gore is a rookie on the mound. He's oftentimes with rookies they compete against themselves more than they compete against the other team. But John Schneider, I did the piece yesterday on SportsCenter. When you think about this race, the Astros, the Rangers, the Mariners, and the Blue Jays. And even if you want to throw the Red Sox in, I mean, they got pummeled pretty good yesterday by the Astros. But you think about the managers in that. Dusty Baker, Bruce Bochy. Baker's got 90-some playoff games. Bochy, 70-some playoff games. Cora, 20-some playoff games that he's managed. And Scott Servais hasn't managed a lot, but he managed to beat the Blue Jays last year. And then you've got John Schneider. And what John Schneider needs to do is to keep his team from playing this next run's okay, but after that, you can't play the game, the paper game. If you look at their lineup, look at our lineup, and think, oh boy, we're in trouble because we don't match up position by position when we play Texas right now. We don't match up position by position when we play these other teams in our division right now because we're undermanned. They've got to go out there and just battle and scratch and claw. And sometimes when you don't have stars out there, the depth players on your team, they'll battle for you. They'll battle in at bats. They'll get dirty. And there's a way to get an energy that's different than the energy you've had all year. And this team needs something different about it. And so I would be reframing this if I'm John Schneider that, look, we can do this. We've got a different look, but we can win this way. Let's be gritty and then go out and execute it. Be really aggressive early in the game. Get out in front, move runners, steal bases, do those things because that's really what you're going to have to do. Even if you run into an out or two, be willing to be able to be aggressive because I think that's the sort of approach they're going to need.
With Steve Phillips, you mentioned that Houston-Boston game last night with the Astros, they just beat up on the Sox. And Shohei Ohtani achieved his first career cycle last night. He hit for the cycle last night. And I was referencing the De La Cruz cycle a couple of months ago, which was incredible. And I think it immediately went viral. Everyone was buzzing about it. And I think that says something about the kid, De La Cruz, something about the team. It had been like 30-plus years since that happened. But I think my reaction to Altuve doing that last night, like I noticed in the moment, Steve, that I'm still not completely over 17. And I feel like I speak for most people in baseball, where Altuve is one of the great stories of the last 20 years. He's a sure first ballot lock Hall of Famer. And yet, even though the reporting I've read would indicate maybe he was the one that really wasn't cheating as much as everyone else, if at all, I gravitate to Altuve as the poster boy of that team. And I think he's taken the biggest hit in terms of his reputation. I'm wondering if you stand by that as well, if you feel the same way, and if you reacted differently to him, achieving what he achieved last night.
Yeah, interesting, because, I kind of put Correa at the forefront of it because he became the spokesman. And even Correa said, like, Altuve wasn't the one doing it. He didn't want to know what pitches were coming. And so I've sort of dismissed Altuve in that. But everybody's different, right, in the way that they attach this story. And, oftentimes it goes to the biggest and best players and gets attached to them. But, it was Marwin Gonzalez that was getting it. It was Reddick who was getting it. It was, that other, actually Reddick said he didn't. And, he was the one who they thought had a buzzer on, too, underneath his uniform at one point. But yeah, I didn't put it on Altuve, so I thought it was pretty amazing. Look, he's like 5'4".
Right.
And what he does on a baseball field is remarkable to me. It's like, I think about pitchers, Hall of Fame pitchers, and Greg Maddux for me is the most amazing pitcher who's ever pitched in baseball because he really had the least stuff. He didn't have any, from the midpoint of his career on, he didn't have an overpowering fastball. He wasn't blowing guys away. He just mixed and matched and worked sequences and changed speeds and kept hitters off balance and fooled everybody. And he got more out of less. And I think for Altuve, that's what I marvel at, is he's such a little fella. And man, he can crush a baseball. And he hit that one out of the stadium yesterday. He hit it over the wall, the Green Monster at Fenway, and out of the park. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm rather forgiving of him.
Really?
Because I really do believe that he wasn't one that was using it. And he knew that they were, but I don't think he was.
I'm looking across at Bryan right now.
Yeah, I know.
He's not.
I know. We need to do another Sports Center segment on this one.
Yes, we do. I'm much more cynical than you are.
It's going to be heated.
Yeah.
And I guess
we need to throw some ties on and get in front of a camera.
Yes,
for this one.
do. We need to double box this one.
I'm bringing Bregman with me.
Because as you should, Poulin. You can get in if you want. You can bring Bregman to the table because if Steve's got Correa, you got Bregman. I guess I just go to Altuve being the best player on the best team. And as good as Correa was, as good as Bregman was, like that was Altuve's team. And it's been his team ever since.
Yeah.
And I guess I just naturally gravitate to that. And I'm also very cynical. Like it feels like there's been a lot of protection of Altuve. And I'm just curious why that is the case. But
wait a minute. You're cynical?
I'm incredibly cynical. Cynical
really?
when it comes to cheating. I'm a man of integrity, Steve.
Oh, I know that.
You know that.
Know that.
And guess what? We got some breaking news here. You speak of integrity. This completely lacks it, in my opinion. You're not going to believe this, Steve, because you've been on the air with us. I had to check to make sure this wasn't a dummy account. Jeff Passan of ESPN just tweeted this out. Let me read this to you. You digest this, Steve, and then I need you to explain this. Jeff Passan of ESPN tweeting out, the LA Angels have placed starter Lucas Giolito, relievers Matt Moore, Ronaldo Lopez, and outfielders Hunter Renfroe and Randall Grichuk on waivers, according to sources tell ESPN. Huge potential playoff implications. All can be claimed by teams for free on Thursday. Passan goes on to say, for the Angels, this will be purely a salary dump because there are no longer any August trades. All they will get from this transaction is salary relief. Teams that claim the players will need only to pay their salaries for the rest of the season. Who gets the players will be determined by reverse order of record, as we know. But I can't, like Lucas Giolito, they just traded a haul for. They're putting him on waivers, Steve. What do you make of this?
This is an ownership-driven move. It's not a baseball move. This is pathetic.
Yeah.
It is absolutely pathetic. And it is one that can disrupt the entire playoff picture right now. Like the idea that this is like in a fantasy league, a fantasy owner just saying, you know what, I'm just going to put all my guys, I'm going to release all my players out there, let you all sort of get them right now. It completely contradicts the integrity of the competitive nature of the game. And it is absurd. And it'll be interesting to see if the commissioner allows it because it is within the rules. But we've never seen anything like this before. And this is they're just dumping salary and giving up on the season and saying that, I mean, first of all, it's even more baseball malpractice.
Yep.
The idea they didn't trade Ohtani, then they go and they gave up most of their farm system, a bunch of their farm system to go get these guys. And now they're just getting relief of money right now and cutting their losses. It is absurdity right now. And it is such a negative imp. It's so malicious when it comes to competitive nature. It's unreal.
It's outrageous.
The first thing I thought was Charles O. Finley.
Exactly. I did too. Yeah, I did too.
My first thought.
And then it made him stop doing it. He wasn't able to sell his players like he wanted to.
I think Manfred, if he's got a pulse, he's got to stop this.
This is absurd.
You can't allow this to happen.
Essentially, the Jays would be in the best position as the lowest ranked potential playoff team.
Possibly.
Potentially.
Or the Red Sox.
What I was going to say, the Sox. The first thing I thought of was the Sox. They have the money to do it. They're not
pitching.
Exactly. Like if they grab Giolito, what are they going to get out of him? 6 starts? Something like that? I mean, man, on top of like, again, you've got bullpen arms, you've got veteran bats in Renfroe and Grichuk. Like it's not like Ohtani's been placed on waivers here, but why not?
Steve, has this been done?
Like, you might as well throw Ohtani out there.
This hasn't been done even on a more singular basis with just a player or two.
Teams have run a player that they might release. So for instance, Donaldson got released. They might run him through outright waivers is what they've put him on. And which are irrevocable waivers that if a guy gets claimed, the team gets him and they just have to they have to pay the salary. You might do that before you're giving up on a guy, and see if somebody's willing to go down that road, or it might spark a conversation with someone, but you can't trade these players now. And so, this is not done. It's not done because it is completely inappropriate and against the nature of competitiveness. And it compromises the integrity of the season, quite honestry.
Yeah,
horrible. What it means is Arte Moreno's selling the team. He's putting the team back up for sale. It's all about money right now. He has no idea. I mean, here's the thing. He could keep guys and potentially get draft picks, and he can't get the guys he traded for draft picks, but he's had Renfroe all year. And so, the idea of what it means for their future, this is just a salary dump, pure and simple. A salary dump. They pick guys up to make a run. They're not getting it done. So now they're dumping the salary, and it means that it's all about money for him, which is what he did to keep Ohtani. It didn't make any sense at all at the time. It was because he thought he could make an extra $20 million with having Ohtani on his team rather than trading him.
So if you could have a candid conversation with one guy, Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout, who would you choose?
Oh, I would talk to Ohtani and say, you're not ever going back to that. This clinches. Like, if I'm Ohtani, I will never play for that team again after this move. No chance.
That's why I think
they just right now clinched. They've got zero chance. Everybody thought, with the injury, maybe he could go back there. Why would you want to play if that owner's still in place?
Well, that's why I think I'd go Trout, Steve, because Ohtani can walk. And he doesn't have to talk to this guy ever again. Trout is locked in, and he's given his whole career to this joke of an organization.
Yeah.
And they've been a joke since day one, effectively. And there's, like, if you're Mike Trout, you're like, I'm absolutely screwed. I'm screwed. I have no chance of ever having success in this league unless I get out of here. And I don't know. Like, I'm with you in terms of, like, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I think it probably was anyway, to say nothing of the fact that the GM just threw Ohtani and his camp under the bus a day ago, talking about them passing on the MRI when he skipped his last start. But Ohtani can walk. Ohtani doesn't have to deal with this garbage anymore. Trout is locked in. What's he going to do?
Yeah, I mean, he can demand a trade and, say, look, I want out. And, I mean, he can make some noise. But I think it seems really clear that you can't possibly keep owning the team after this.
No.
And here's the thing: it shouldn't be even allowed right now. I mean, it is really. I mean, it's insulting to those that compete and grind out every single day of putting teams together and competing and challenging at the trade deadline, to have somebody now just say, oh, I'm going to put all my guys out there and available for the one team that has the worst record right now. They can claim them all if they want.
Wow.
Really is not appropriate.
Wow. Yeah, that is. So you can put multiple claims in, I guess, and get all these guys?
The Red Sox should claim every one of them if they want to.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just got to pay their salary.
That's
you
amazing.
You have to take people off your roster to make space for them.
Right, of course.
And all of that. But yeah.
Now, significant to do it today ahead of the September expanded roster.
Right. So now when they clear waivers, it'll be done prior to September 1st, which means teams will have them eligible for the postseason.
Well, like, I'm looking at it right now. What about the Giants? Giants are a half game out of the wild card.
Well, it goes through the American League first, if unless they've changed it.
Okay.
It goes from the American League from worst to best, and then National League worst to best. So it goes through the league first.
So it's Sox and Jays at that point. Like, obviously the Yankees aren't going to do it. Like Cleveland, no, they're probably not going to do it. It's probably Sox, Jays, and then you move on from there, I guess, in the American League. Like, if there's a guy that the Jays would take here, who would it be? I don't think it would be Giolito. I don't see why they do that. But what about
middle infielder?
No, exactly. There's no shortstop you're looking at necessarily. Right. But Moore, Lopez, anyone out of the bullpen to bolster what you have there? I don't know.
You might get. Yeah, Renfroe can hit one out of the ballpark.
Yeah, he
sure.
can.
And not a bad option to hit one out of the ballpark. Get a good guy on a team and that sort of thing. Well, the question is, do you take anybody to block? Right, you know what I mean? Like, you can also get guys to block and put them in long relief if you want to, and put somebody out there in a way. And so, or what you do is, you can claim them and then release them and claim them or put them on waivers yourself. And that way it goes beyond the playoff date. And somebody, so you can play blocking games a little bit with it to where you can extend it beyond the September 1st date. Now, teams can still get them for the regular season. They couldn't use them for the playoffs if you do that. But this is crazy. It really is crazy. As I sit here just trying to brainstorm of every possible scenario that can happen right now. It's nuts.
You are right back in full manager mode right now.
As you should be.
And I'm angry. I'm on the phone calling the commissioner's office right now. If I'm a playoff team right now, I'm trying to hold off people chasing me, I'm calling up saying, "How is this allowed?
Yep.
How can we let him do this?
I agree with you. I agree with you. And if I'm a fan of the Angels, I'm saying, get this guy out of here. If I'm a fan of the Athletics, I'm saying, like, the other three teams in the division are doing great. It's the Angels and the Athletics. Complete joke show out there. It's crazy. All right, Steve, we'll leave it there. Thank you, pal.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much.
Steve Phillips, our TSN MLB analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. I'm
thinking of an equivalent. Like, I'm thinking of some sort of equivalent move of releasing.
I don't recall anything like this where it is just, this is like out of a movie. Like, this is Major League where the owner's like, just get rid of them because we don't want to pay them the rest of
the night. Major League.
It really is. Like, Lucas Giolito, they just acquired a month ago and paid a haul for him.
In a surprise move.
Right. In order to we thought
shore up Ohtani.
Make Ohtani feel welcome and make sure that he knew that the Angels were in it to win it. And now a month later, they have completely pulled the 180. Like, this is a complete joke. And if I'm Rob Manfred, I'm sorry, you have to stop this.
Can you see clubhouses right now?
Well, like,
holy smokes.
Because it's all about, like, every GM, I'm sure, would look at this differently, right? Poulin, like, half of them will go to their owner and say, if I can get this guy, you got to let me get him.
You got to let me get him.
And the other will say, if the other team gets it, we're screwed.
And then the chess game, he talked about the blocking, the chess game, like,
yeah,
you know, so if you're the Jays and you think that Texas needs pitching, you say, well, we got to take Giolito.
Got to take Giolito here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But and Randall Grichuk, this front office, they liked Randall.
They liked him.
They know Randall. Whew, man, this Angels story is wild.
Spice things up.
This Angels whole season has been so typical of who they are and what they represent.
Two of the best players in the game.
Two of the greatest players of all time. And nothing. You get nothing out of it. If anything, you've embarrassed yourself even more. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened right after Ohtani got hurt, too. I think you bring up a good point with September 1 right around the corner, expansion of rosters. But
because
Ohtani
it makes these guys really attractive because you can use them in the playoffs.
But now Ohtani is, now that he should be just shut down completely. Why even go out there and hit? Like, if you're Ohtani, aren't you telling this team, I'm done? Get me out of here. Why wouldn't you go there and say, put me on waivers? What's the point of keeping him?
Apparently, he really likes life in California. There's other teams in California he can play for.
Well, I mean, you got the Padres and you got the Dodgers. You're not going to Oakland. I guess the Giants, too.
Dodgers, you can live in the same house.
Dodgers would work. Yeah. But, yeah, Steve, with an interesting point that I guess they all have to go through the American League, which means it's Boston and then Toronto, because the Yankees aren't going to claim anyone. Cleveland's not claiming anybody. So if that's the case, if all these guys go through waivers, American League first.
Minnesota's right there as well. Right?
Minnesota would be in terms of their standing, yes. Minnesota, where are they?
They're a drop below the Jays.
They're actually below the Jays.
Yeah, so
they might pick somebody up.
Minnesota, who doesn't spend a lot.
That's the thing. I don't see it, but
that's where you see the Red Sox.
Red Sox very well could. They're not like the thing is their ownership is not what they once were either.
No.
They don't spend like they once did, and they're not really in the race. They're kind of gratuitously in the race. You know, we'll throw you a bone, but you're not really in the race. I kind of sense that it would be the Jays that would come up first.
So is it 24 hours?
I don't know. I don't know how long you have until you can claim these guys, but
it's got to be before July 1st, so we're the 29th now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. September 1st is Friday, so I would think you've got maybe 48 hours.
Wow.
We'll see. I mean, there's going to be some pressure on the Jays to do something here.
But there has to be a waiver time limit. It might be 5 o'clock tomorrow.
You said it's 47 hours, Grappler, so yeah, you got basically just under 2 days.
2 days.
To make a decision on this.
So
5
o'clock.
I would suspect the commissioner is probably on the phone right now with ownership saying, what are we doing here and how am I going to handle this? All right, there's some breaking news for you.
They have a heads up.
Yeah, no kidding. There's some breaking news for you. All right, confirm and deny still to come. Cheryl Pounder, our good friend Cheryl, coming up in an hour. Big news today.
Very excited, Cheryl Pounder.
Women's
back and forth
hockey.
with them earlier today. She's ecstatic.
As she should be. Yeah, Cheryl, I mean, this is long overdue, and we'll tell you more on what kind of news came down in the women's hockey world today. So Cheryl will join us in about an hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, confirm and deny in about a half an hour. Our friend Cheryl Pounder in about an hour. Some wild news this afternoon in baseball. Jeff Passan of ESPN reporting that the Los Angeles Angels have placed starter Lucas Giolito, relievers Matt Moore, Ronaldo Lopez, and outfielders Hunter Renfroe and Randall Grichuk on waivers. Simply salary dump because Ohtani's not pitching anymore and the team stinks and they're out of it. And the owner, as Steve Phillips just said, Phillips is projecting the owner will try to sell the team again.
And this is absolutely about cash, and that's it.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought was in the early 70s when Charles Finley tried to sell players.
Mm.
And the commissioner stepped in and said, you can't sell players.
Right.
But this changes. The first thing everyone's talking about is this dramatically could change
playoff
pennant
races.
races.
Well, and that's
Absolutely.
like you're talking legit pieces. Lucas Giolito was one of the 2 or 3 best arms available. They just acquired him a month ago for a haul, and now they put him on waivers. And they acquired Ronaldo Lopez as well. They acquired 2 arms out of Chicago, paid a price for it, and now they're both available for nothing. And Phillips, we just had Steve on, and it's been clarified that it is not league-centric in terms of waivers. So everyone is capable of grabbing these guys.
So worst to best.
Worst to best. So you can count out a number of teams. Obviously, Oakland, Kansas City, Colorado, the White Sox. Like, none of the bad teams that are out of it. Even the Yankees. The Yankees are out of it. They're not claiming anybody. But you get into a situation where you're talking the Marlins, who are chasing a wild card. I don't see them doing it, though, because I don't think that ownership will get involved. Cincinnati, small market. I'm not sure they pick up price tags. But then you get into some big boys quick.
San Fran, yes.
The Giants and the Red Sox have money, and they're both in the red. The Giants are just outside of the wild card. Like, if you're Arizona, who are trying to make the playoffs here for the first time in a while, and Arizona's a team that could possibly claim these guys. You look at it, the Jays are further up the list. Miami, Cincinnati, San Francisco, Boston, Arizona, Minnesota, and the Cubs would all be able to stake claim to these players before the Jays could.
Do the Cubs jump in here?
Well, the Cubs are another team. Like, they don't spend like they used to, but they're still the Cubs. Like the Giants, the Red Sox, and the Cubs. And that's going to be such a bad look if these guys disperse throughout those 3 teams.
But so each player is handled individually. You put a waiver claim in on just a player, but you can put claims in on all 5.
If you want to. That's what Steve was saying. Like, technically, a team could get all of these players. Now, they'd have to release players from the 40-man roster and all that. Like, it's more complicated than that. No team's likely to do that. But I wouldn't be shocked if a team grabbed a couple of these guys.
Well, do you hedge your bets? Now it's a chess game, okay? If you're going after him, do I go after him?
Right. Do I take him first?
Like, it's clear that they're going to,
yeah.
2 position players and 3 pitchers, correct?
Yes. A starter, 2 relievers, and 2 bats, including one of them, Randall Grichuk, a former Blue Jay, who's a right-handed, capable of hitting for power player.
And this is a 48-hour
yes
term. So
yep. They've got
the commissioner's going to get involved
He's got to. I mean,
some capacity.
This is just such a blatantly dishonest way of running your operation. It looks cheap. It feels cheap. It doesn't feel like the major leagues.
What does it open up? If another team says, well, wait a second, look who I'm going to try and dump.
That's actually, I think that's probably the better angle of looking at it from a commissioner's standpoint.
The chain reaction.
Exactly. It's not so much that this is unfair that these teams aren't going to be able to get them, so these teams chasing them are going to improve. It's more so Oakland wakes up and goes, oh, we can do that?
Oh, boy.
Why am I paying this guy?
7 guys.
Yeah. Like, how about the Mets? The Yankees? Like, these guys,
the Mets could do anything.
The Mets have so much money.
They could do anything.
Right. But if you're looking at it and you're other teams like that, you're like, what am I paying these guys
for?
for?
You're mad at somebody.
Yeah. They're out. We're out of it. They're free agents at the end of the year. Just, well, fine. We'll release them too. See you later. Like, there is a real competitive, like, balance issue here. And there's an integrity of sport issue here. Where
the commissioner steps in.
I'm sorry, I don't think he can. I think he has to.
Cannot step into this.
I think he has to, because this can just set such a precedent you want nothing to do with. Because like the whole point of them establishing the hard trade deadline was to effectively avoid this kind of stuff. Like the goofiness of the way they used to operate, where everyone went on waivers in August and then you'd flip them.
Crazy, and I wouldn't claim them because I'm letting them slide to you.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of politicking, a lot like guys with major contracts, they'd just be on waivers, understanding that teams wouldn't claim them. It was always a shock when that would happen from time to time, because you'd hear some names, you're like, wow, that guy's a really great player. Well, he's on waivers because he's still making a ton of money and no one's going to pick that up.
Right.
But you established a hard trade deadline, just like the other leagues do. And I think it's worked out very well for baseball. This is kind of circumventing that.
Well, it's cleaned it up. You never understood what was going on.
That was very confusing.
Okay, the trade deadline, but...
You got claimed, and then you can work out a trade, and you make the trade.
Soft trade, eligible for playoffs, not eligible for playoffs.
Yeah, it was very confusing, the way it used to operate. And they're trying to clean that up.
Even expanding the roster as much as they did.
Yep.
Because essentially, if you are a strong organization, you already get a big boost in September.
Mm-hmm.
You can't use them in the playoffs, but by your expanded roster.
Yeah. I wonder if there's an Ohtani angle here. I wonder if the Angels have been notified. I don't see why they would, but maybe they know we're out. Like Ohtani's not coming back. So this is almost in protest, like acting petulant, basically. You want to see bad? We're really going to show you
my
bad.
toys and going home.
Everyone's going to go. Everyone we acquired for you, Shohei, to try to get you into the playoffs, they're all going to leave now.
Like it's Shohei's fault.
Like it's his problem. But for me, it's Mike Trout. If I could talk to anybody, because like as much as Ohtani he has been the man for the Angels for the past 2 or 3 years, just based on how he's played and the fact that he's been healthy. Trout's been so injury riddled. Trout's the greatest player in franchise history. Trout is the man when it comes to the LA Angels. And
we were talking about him. I was in Philly a couple weeks ago. My son-in-law is a huge sports fan. And he was talking about Mike Trout because he's like a huge Eagles fan.
He's a big Philly
guy.
Yeah.
and we were talking about the Phillies. He's like, why couldn't we get a guy like Mike Trout here who would actually want to be here?
Yep.
And we're a good team and we compete every year. And
well, that's going to be the question in the offseason.
He's in Eagles gear at the Eagles game.
He's a huge Eagle fan. He's a huge, I think he grew up a Phillies fan.
He did.
And like that'll be the big question mark at the winter meetings, is anyone willing to take on his contract, because it is so exorbitant.
Well, injuries.
And he's such an injury-plagued player. But he gets healthy, there's still Mike Trout there. Like it's not like he's 40 years old. He's in his early 30s.
When one of the best is that injury prone. Ooh,
that scares you.
Yeah, it's a big risk.
Now, maybe the Angels are willing to eat some of the contract.
He could be one of the best, most injured players that I can think of across sport.
Like in recent years, it's been every time you hear about Mike Trout, it feels like he's going on the IL.
Yeah.
And like for a serious amount of time. But if you could get them to eat even 50% of the deal, I don't know if they would based on what we saw today. But Mike Trout at half price, that becomes compelling, and maybe Philly steps in. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the Yankees say that's our guy. Like we're gonna try to do something different here. Bring in Trout, have Judge.
Oh, if he was ever available and Philly didn't get him, there would be
people would be freaking in Philly, I'm sure.
Oh, it'd be great.
Confirm and deny in about 20 minutes. Our friend Cheryl Pounder coming up as well. Some wild news in baseball, and again, the Jays are back in action tonight. Bo Bichette being placed on the IL. Matt Chapman on the IL as well. They're struggling, man. The left side of the infield is out for the Jays, but they still are in a position where they should win the ball game tonight. Nationals not much of a team. They got a big win last night.
This would be a way better story if there was a third baseman or a shortstop on that list.
Exactly. Throw a stud in there that can play short or third. Now we're talking up here in Toronto, although they might not get him anyway. Another team could claim him. So we'll continue to look ahead to Jays Nationals tonight. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, so John Schneider was speaking earlier. We got to try to find this audio. He was asked about how he intends on handling the shortstop position moving forward with Bo Bichette going on the IL. He said, quote, creatively, it's going to get wild. It's going to get dirty, ugly, crazy at times, end quote.
Wow.
That's one way to describe it. We're going to have to be creative. It's going to get wild. It's going to get dirty, ugly, and crazy. That's what you want to hear if you're Ernie Clement. That's how John Schneider feels about
Ernie
you.
was good last night.
Ernie's been fine. But, hey, you got a long stint of Ernie at short. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get ugly. Going to get crazy at times. That's what you get with Ernie. Or whoever else it's going to be. Probably Espinal. Can't imagine Biggio plays short. Maybe you will.
Oh, Biggio. Well, Biggio could slide into second, too.
Mm-hmm.
Merrifield can play second. I mean,
Yeah,
you've got options.
They'll move things around. Yeah. They got McCoy. They called this McCoy kid up. He's got a shot at doing that. He's kind of a utility move around infielder. I guess it's actually a pretty good description. It's going to get wild. It's going to get dirty, ugly,
well,
crazy.
You know what I would say to that? Pretty hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Right?
Do whatever you got to do to get a win.
Yeah. Like scrap it out. You know, This is when teams, dig down and figure it out.
Yeah, you're right. The best teams find a way. It doesn't matter what the lineup is.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the pitching's been great all year. There's going to be even more of an emphasis on that.
Win a game 2-1.
Yeah, if you have to, go for it. Barrios pitch a jam, go to the bullpen.
Or 10-8.
Well, like Phillips said earlier this hour, like if you're Schneider, you can't be comparing and contrasting based on your lineup card. Because you're going to see holes in your own lineup that you say, this doesn't work out. Like you look at what they got tonight. They got Jansen hitting cleanup tonight.
Both catchers in the lineup. Like
both guys in the lineup. Kirk's going to, I guess, I don't know. I think Jansen's DH and I think Kirk's behind the plate.
No, I think Kirk was DHing. But
is it Kirk DHing?
I
okay.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that would make sense. Barrios on him out. But you got Ernie Clement. You got Kiermaier. Yeah. We'll see what we got. We'll see what we got.
You just like saying Ernie Clement.
I do. I like Ernie. I'm a fan. I love that name. You don't see too many Ernies anymore.
It's a good name.
Yeah. Ernest. Like they just Ernie's not around anymore.
Call me Ernie.
Ernie, Gary.
My 3 sons.
Larry. Yeah, they're just not. It's not a handle that really remains in circulation. All right, final hour coming up. Cheryl Pounder will join us at 6:30. Confirm and deny still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.